What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Adobe Live. It's a graphic design one. It's a packaging one. I'm so glad to be here with our buddy Shantanu Sharma. Shantanu, what's up, man?
Hey, Nick. So glad to be here again. Super excited.
Can you believe it's day 2 already?
I know. Day 1 went by super fast, and I'm kind of going to be missing this in like a couple of hours too. So yeah.
You're right, man. It's a fun little thing to do each time. And you got in so much work yesterday. If you guys haven't checked out part 1, you can always go back and check it out on YouTube or Behance. We did so much yesterday. It was kind of like, I was almost thinking we're done, but now we have so much we could do. You've built out quite a great little plan of what we're going to look at here. Before we get into it, we just want to remind you guys a little bit about the previous streams. You can obviously check them out anytime on YouTube or Behance. Check out our illustrator, Caitlin Kinley. She had a composite thing with different conceptual advertisements for Photoshop. And don't miss our Illustrator Creative Challenges that are happening daily with Andrew Hockrattle. They're at 12:30 a.m. Pacific time, right before the stream. You can tune in and challenge yourself anytime. Go back, check out all the ones from the past. They're fantastic. That does it for all of our fun little announcements at the beginning. We're going to get into a little bit of maybe a recap, and then tell us again, for those folks that missed yesterday, a little bit about yourself first. Where are you from? What are you doing currently? And then we can get into a little bit about what we did yesterday.
Of course. Yeah, I just have a quick little presentation prepared to kind of take you through and like tell you about who I am in case you missed yesterday. So my name is Shantanu Sharma. I'm an Indian designer and illustrator currently based in New York City. So I was actually born in Sri Lanka, moved to New Delhi, grew up in Singapore, moved back to New Delhi, grew up in Dubai a little bit, moved back to New Delhi until I make the big jump to go study in New York. And that's kind of where I've been for the last 5 years. I went to go study at the School of Visual Arts in New York City. And yeah, I've just been working for a year right now. I'm a recent graduate, and I currently work at Wieden & Kennedy, which is an ad agency that everyone should definitely check out if they don't know about. During my time there in the last year, worked on a few projects for Kentucky Fried Chicken, created the holiday packaging and holiday bucket for them later last year during the holidays. Did custom typography, illustration, graphic design, art direction for several other global campaigns and campaigns in North America. Created merchandise for them that also sold out in a few minutes, and Snoop Dogg also owns a pair. And here's a few pieces of my student work. I'm super interested in like all facets of graphic design and really try not to limit myself, whether it's motion, out of home campaigns, making publications or books, branding and identity systems and illustrations for restaurant branding. So yeah, just really trying to flex as many muscles as I could within graphic design because it's such a vast field. And just being super excited and challenging myself as much as possible. You
really got to work on a little variety, my friend.
Not enough.
Completely joking with you, because it's just so great to see. You've only been out of school for a year now?
Yeah, almost exactly a year. Yeah, May of last year and then June this year. So like a little over.
Yeah. And like, I know we talked a little maybe about this yesterday, but before we even get into it, what do you feel is the number one thing that you would say anyone should be thinking about as they're leaving school and getting into even looking for a job, prepping that portfolio, writing that resume? What's that one thing that you think kind of helps with the success?
I feel like building good, solid case studies and having a really good rationale and story behind all your projects. I mean, design is super subjective, but keeping things as objective as possible and approaching things with a super strategic mindset definitely helps, and definitely helps you separate yourself from everybody else because it's a very competitive field and landscape. So
yeah, I agree. I think you're starting to see, even when you look through Behance projects and you might just stumble across someone's art, you could see the difference between someone who puts the case study together and someone that just might put some random images together, right? Like the true strength comes from that building a case study. study. And what a perfect segue, because the end result of what we're going to be doing today, and after we go through our recap, you're building a case study for this, not only just assets, but we're going to see how you put this together to present, right?
Of course, yeah. Just a super quick, super baseline introduction as to how you can build a case study and present your work and talk about your work. Because ultimately, when you're presenting, you're telling a story and trying to communicate effectively and communicate what you've been trying to achieve. And so how does that translate visually, and how do you do that narratively, where arranging your images or based on what you're trying to show? So that's super exciting.
Good. And like yesterday, we're going to rely on you guys in chat to help us out with a ton of great suggestions. We're going to be doing a lot of copywriting. We're going to be needing probably a lot of opinion as far as like, which one do you like? This one, this one. The naming is always the best too. Maybe some headlines for some advertisements. That would be fun to do. Let's take a look at your artboards from yesterday and just do a brief rundown of what we accomplished. And you can take it from the beginning and then we can just continue on from there.
Of course. Yeah. So we started with, this was just a fun exercise for me and everyone watching. I wanted to make a super interactive project and like really quickly just show what a branding and identity project could potentially look like, but keeping everything super collaborative, because design is often a very lonely experience. So having the opportunity to be designing live and kind of on the spot is really something that really excited me and challenged me too. So that's a muscle I really wanted to flex. So we started with creating a fictional line of juice cans, and I started by asking the audience to give me some suggestions for a name or for a fictional juice company. And Philip, our lovely viewer from yesterday from the audience in the chat, happily suggested Splish, and then the audience voted on which one they liked the best. And then I created a few logo type options, and then asked everyone to vote on which one they thought worked the best. We landed on option number 3. And then just built that out accordingly. So we built a solid logo type, super punchy, fresh, refreshing, positive, and kind of like loud, and which is also just goes with the whole core of the brand. We had many discussions based on that yesterday. And then we created an identity system and packaging system for the labels using simple patterns that kind of alluded to the word mark, using the same sort of angle, and then creating a type system for how everything should be set, talking about consistency within branding and identity design. And then we went on to create mock-ups for those and how those labels would potentially look on cans, and then further art direction of where those could live. And then also created some social assets, and which we'll be currently working on and finishing today. But yeah, that's kind of where we were at from yesterday.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I think we have. I'm wondering if Philip took the day off today, or if he's in the chat. Please let us know.
Their job was done.
Yeah, you deserve. We gave you a day off today if you'd like to, because he definitely helped with some really great copywriting, and everybody else kind of chimed in with fantastic fruit names for all the different flavors and everything. Yeah. And it's neat too. Like I think there were some spots there too that obviously you can look at a lot of these artboards and see there's some gaps in between those steps, and that also took a lot of like little finagling and kind of like fine tuning to get to that. So it wasn't as if Shantanu just was like going, yeah, boom, 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 boom. It's so neat to like know that there's the dirty stuff in between, right? Like we were talking like yesterday with the artboards.
Of course, yeah, it's super important, especially in an initial phase of a project, to not be precious, just be super scrappy, messy.
Yeah.
Just throw as many things as you can to the wall and see what sticks. This, of course, kind of counts as like a first or second draft. And like, if we had the privilege of time, we'd keep further developing this and see what works.
Yeah.
But like within this like 2.5 to 4 hours that we kind of have, it's a solid exercise to just show how much you could do within this limited time frame, and then think about the potential as to what could happen if you kept repeating this process with the luxury of time as well. So that's kind of what we wanted to communicate and achieve through an interactive process such as
these are those ultimate like 2-hour brand challenges. Like I think to me that's sometimes the best exercise to go through. You know, I love this idea of kind of like really fine tuning things, doing it in a timed way as a great exercise for anybody to try. And these are good ones to work alongside with. Go back and watch this again and see, can you do this as well with your own interpretation of maybe a unique brand, right?
Of course, yeah.
I might be starting to do that as well, just to kind of get back into the swing of things after taking a little time off. But where did we end off, and what's our first step?
Cool. So where we ended up yesterday is that we started making Instagram posts and thinking and talking about social strategy for how the brand could present itself on social media. So
Mm-hmm.
we were trying to think in grids of three when it comes to Instagram, because that's kind of how things are laid out within the UI for the app/website. So ideally, in an ideal world, you'd have a proper grid that you can kind of keep building upon, but doesn't necessarily end up being so in the real world. But for the purpose of our case study, that's what we're going to be doing. So for now, I think let's start with an interactive element, because that's the core.
Let's do it.
That's the core of all this project. So let's just come up with a good solid tagline for Splish, which is the name of our juice company. We had Make a Splash, which people seem to really like from yesterday.
Yeah.
We included in the can. If the chat comes up with anything else, or
you can always have a few, I love how brands can kind of they can have multi kind of taglines and mottos to be specific to maybe particular applications they might be doing. And when we looked at yesterday, I think Splash and Splish were both, the first thing we found in the definition was it is the sound of water or fluid moving. It's like that. Yeah. That's what's described it. So like, let's get a good tagline or some other good, like, let's just even call them social media headlines, right? What else can be accompanying the can in a very quick headline that you guys think really reflects not only the energetic, positive vibe of what we're talking about, but this idea of sound. Like I think yesterday we were even saying like sounds like delicious or sounds like refreshing, things like that would be kind of unique to play around with too.
Totally. Yeah.
So let us know, chat, whatever you've got. We need some good mottos, some good headlines. Feel free to drop them in there. I'll be looking at them as Shantanu starts building a few things here. So where are we at now? What do you want to work on?
So we're going to be creating the third or the middle social post that we have here. So we have on either side imagery of the can and the product. So it'd be nice to kind of contrast that by having a social post that's purely typography to further build out the typographic system of the identity.
Yeah.
So just so it's like looks at you're communicating that super effectively within the case study too, because that's ultimately what we're trying to fill out and achieve by the end of the stream. So so like keep the suggestions coming. We've got Splish Splash flavor.
Splish Splash flavor. I like that a lot, you know? Because I think too, like we talked yesterday, what is the thing we really want to stand for? What is the thing, in addition to being positive and energetic and things like that? Is it refreshing? Is it thirst quenching? Is it just a vibe? Like what is our most important thing? So Becca's saying we need Philip. We've got plenty of good creative brains here. Let's see what we could do. Looks like we got 72 of you right now to kind of like come up with something really cool. If you've never chimed in, this would be a perfect time to test the waters and chat and let us know what you think. Trust me, we could do it without Philip. We got this.
His loss.
He's gonna come back and be like, I can't believe what they thought of without me. Philip, wherefore art thou, Philip?
I really hope he does. But
go for it, man.
In the meantime, I'll just start creating other assets for our out of home as we get the suggestions kind of rolling in, kind of working on things simultaneously as people have to often do in our fields. So just keeping things moving and keeping things super fun, but keep the suggestions coming too. Yeah,
let's see what else everybody's got. So there's so many other things you can do too. Like you can build, I know in a lot of situations like this, you're probably asked to create a sales sheet, something that the public doesn't see, but maybe a lot of the retailers would see. And I think that's kind of an interesting time to, to kind of like, you're like, wow, I'm building it for a different audience now, right? Like you got to do something really informative for someone that might be buying this. There's so many cool things that these products get to do as far as unique applications. Have you had any weird ones from clients that you're like, okay, that came out of left field?
I feel like business cards feel a bit weird these days, because like I feel like everything's super digital and kind of feel like exists in a bit more digital realm, and business cards feel like an outdated solution or an outdated ask, but it's always still nice to have like a smaller asset that you can flex your typographic system with. So I definitely get the appeal, but I feel like it's starting to get a bit outdated for me.
Yeah, and I think it's also like an eco thing as well. It kind of feels like there's ways. I've been using a really cool little thing that you attach. It's on the back of your phone, and it's someone could just tap their phone to it, and you get all your contact information. It's really, really cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's funny because I do miss the business card, but how often do you have it on you?
Exactly.
and for those moments, like just getting to go to a few conferences over the last few months, and getting back into that networking thing, it was so great to just be like, oh, tap your phone here, and then all of your information is sent to them immediately with all the links you want, which is really kind of fun. So I agree. But isn't it neat too? Like you can still do something very creative and unique with business cards that you can't in any other application,
Yeah. I mean, as long as you have a unique perspective and you're differentiating yourself from other people, just try and doing something that's never been done. But
Yeah.
like doing that with something that already has been overused and overdone in so many different ways. It's an exciting opportunity to kind of explore and flex that muscle.
I'm gonna throw in my recommendation when we're at the end here. We should do a scratch and sniff business card, and it has the flavor of whatever color it is.
Wow, I love that. I love that.
So we've got a few here. We've got let's see. I saw a few that started earlier here. We had what was that first one? Splish Splash flavor, which really like as well. Then we have a splish for every mix. I like that as well. Then we have a QR code for sure. That'd be something to kind of mix around with. Mix it up with Splish. That's a good one. I really like that. What else do we got here? Let's see. Oh yeah, there's some really cool ones. A xylophone business card. You plug it into a computer and it can play music. All right, that one I'm looking up, CJ. Holy, that's amazing. I've never seen anything like that. Some of the best ones I've seen are some metal ones that have like the deboss or the emboss in them.
Wow.
And you can apply like stickers for the individual person and all of their, contact information. You could do it for like an agency, and then everybody gets their own little area where it has their imprint of their information. There's some really good, fun things. I like that it kind of goes in and out of style, business cards, you know?
Yeah. I mean, as long as you're doing something exciting with it and keeping things super fresh.
Exactly. So I'm glad to see what you're working on right now, because like I always wonder when I'm using a very slanted italic font, how do you align it? Do you like this? You're purposely going to align with the angle?
Yeah, I think it goes well with the sort of pattern system that we're also creating, having everything super angular and aligned in that sort of sense. Again, going with the art direction for the cans as well. So
yeah,
I think that's definitely a look and feel, and maybe something we could potentially explore with the typography as well. So just trying out both, seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And then going along accordingly. But
because I know sometimes when you're aligning it, you keep it perfectly left. I do like the step every once in a while. It kind of helps. Maybe I guess it's all about your opinion. What's easier to read, right?
Yeah.
Like I think, and then plus if you're really going to play off this angle and use it in a lot of different ways, the way you are with the pattern, it's obviously set from the logo type itself. It is kind of unique to play with this a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, it depends on like where. And the strategic reasoning behind certain things. So exploring both is something potentially that we are doing currently.
Yes.
So depending on certain situations and where things are going to live, it can definitely be more dynamic and kind of have both exist for if it works and kind of fits into the system. So
yeah. Oh, clever Devlin put up a great one saying, try it frozen and you can make it slush instead of splish. So it's kind of like, how neat would that be, that a product could actually change to a fictitious unique other name by just freezing it, right? That would be kind of fun.
Again, just keeps things super fresh along with it. We have a super simple system over here. I wouldn't say it's entirely complicated. We've got a pretty consistent pattern system, and like we're fleshing out the typography system at the moment, and then going along with that sort of consistency that we can build upon potentially in the out of home, and posters that we have here for these empty canvases and artboards will be incredibly exciting. So looking forward to getting to those very quickly.
Good. What advice do you have particularly for, let's say, something even more complicated of a brand? How do you keep those elements consistent? Are there certain principles you do, or is it, really based on the individual project or brand itself?
I would say it really depends on like what you're trying to achieve and what you're trying to stand for. There's certain core principles that you have when approaching certain projects, but I would say trying to approach everything with like a unique perspective and a fresh mind, because everything's super different, and there's so many different solutions for the same thing. So kind of having that and exploring those avenues was definitely exciting too.
Yeah. I remember someone described it. I brought in a guest once to my class. I can't remember who it was. And they had this great way to envision it. And they used a brand they showed an image of it. And the brand looked very effervescent, very bubbly, very like kind of like almost Willy Wonka, very childlike, really, really great. And they basically were saying, like, capture that entire entity of a mood board. And what you want to consider is every element that you create for that brand. Imagine if it went through like a machine or some kind of a thing that gave it that touch, that gave it all of everything you can look back on as like from your mood board or your brand board that you put together. And it's almost like this machine of going like it goes in very vanilla, but it comes out with all of those attributes and traits that you just established. So it's kind of like, imagine it going through a conveyor belt and coming out at the end with all of those things applied. And it's kind of neat. You can even take it to something as simple as a Instagram post or a copy as well. Copy is, I think the brand voice is a big thing too that we sometimes don't think about as well as designers.
For sure. Yeah, especially working at an ad agency, you realize like, when you have a dedicated team for strategy and copywriting, you kind of gain that sort of appreciation for it. I know we spoke about writing yesterday and what that looks like as a designer, but being able to communicate your thoughts effectively is incredibly important too. So.
Yeah. And then like that becomes like we talked about it yesterday, that North Star, right? Like what are those things that are really driving the brand and you want a customer to look at and say like, if you were to describe this Splish brand, right, what would you say? And the whole goal is to be right on point with what you've written in your strategy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we started off with talking about what we wanted to achieve. So, I mean, the day before yesterday was the first day of summer. So we wanted to create a summer drink. Juice is definitely a big part of that sort of refreshment and hydration in summer days. So that was the whole rationale behind the project, which is, again, super excited for having everyone kind of be a part of this journey and be recommending as much as you can.
Yes. I love what Becca said too. I always ask for the copy to get provided for me. I don't consider writing a skill of mine. And that's true. And if that's not your skill, right, it's great to have someone, maybe if it's on your team or someone you can outside contract with. It's join forces. That's what I always say. It's like, that's why creative and strategy can work and copywriting like that can work so well together. Yeah. But boy, it is something else when you can have just a little bit of knowledge on how to write a quick tagline or a great headline, and it comes from the designer. I've seen people being very surprised sometimes when they're like, "Oh, you came up with that?" It's like, yeah, we could do both, you know?
Exactly. Again, just trying to flex as many muscles as you have, build out every skill. And then the more skills you have as a designer, the more hats you wear, the stronger you will be, not only as a designer, but just as a creative in general. So
yeah, exactly.
Everything's just practice at the end of the day. So as much as you keep doing something and successfully do it, you get confidence as well. So it's all about building that.
That's very true. Oh, there you go. So I love the idea of how you're kind of, this middle one has all of the, let's call it the message, and then the right and left are more of the bookends.
Yeah. Just building out the patterns, not only in your identity system and packaging system, but also in your social strategy as well. Thinking about how that would look visually when someone's actually approaching you on social or getting on to your Instagram. Because ultimately, most people are going to hear about the product or project on social itself. So really ensuring you have a strong and like dominating social presence that can truly reflect the brand that you're trying to create is super helpful. So
do we have a hashtag, like a dedicated hashtag yet, or is that something we should ask chat for?
We should definitely ask the chat.
Yeah. So so we need a creative exclusive hashtag for Splish. So that is kind of like your abbreviated tagline or motto, right? I think the 2-word thing is the best. If you can nail it with that, and it's amazing to see how much incredible energy can come from all of these things that people are using with hashtags that can really start a movement.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you never know how people are going to be responding to the brand or how people are going to react. That's something you can only predict to a certain extent, but things kind of just take a life on its own once they're released into the public. So
and if it's easy to remember, if it's fun to say, if it has a bit of a rhyme. I love the idea. So we got Splish Splash from Becca. And Voodoo Val was in the process of typing it at the same time. Look at that. You guys have great minds think alike. I love it. That's great. Yeah, I like Splish Splash because I think again it carries over everything. We're used to hearing that together. It's been in songs. You know, Splish Splash is a perfect kind of combination. And it kind of just continues on with the positivity of, you know, what you're bringing on with the brand.
Correct. Yeah. So right now I'm just filling out the case study as well, side by side. So we've got like the quote unquote messy artboard where everything's sort of just like a mind map of certain things.
Yes.
And then we've got like our own narrative that we're trying to achieve and create through the case study that we have. So started with the social posts. So we have that over here with the social strategy and the 3 Instagram posts that we just finished.
Great.
And then we've got the logo that we would drop in. We've got the product photography that we can definitely drop in too. We're working on a hero image currently, and then we'll get to the out of homes very shortly too. So
It's perfect.
Keep those suggestions coming on what do you think the hashtag and what do you think the tagline should be, and we can definitely start typesetting those to be included within the posters.
I love too that I feel like we're playing a TV game show when you go back to that other one and we're filling in each tile. We're like, okay, next up, let's complete this board. So any other hashtags or any other taglines from you guys would be greatly appreciated. We've got a few. I think we got a few good contenders, but it's always good to get a good list. I'm a big fan of brainstorming, and it suffers obviously more virtual, but some of the best brainstorms I've been in live with people, when you can bring in a little bit of energy and a little bit of inspiration, sometimes those are by far some of the best times at agencies.
Totally.
You know?
I know, just stick everything up on a wall, see what comes out of it, the conversations, and sort of like the impromptu nature of things is very exciting, and you kind of feed off that energy, which is definitely something I miss working in an office that you don't necessarily get on Zoom.
I also like too where someone might bring up a great idea that's so different or so 180 from maybe where your frame of mind was, that it opens up your horizons a little bit too, and next thing you know, you're thinking a little bit different yourself. You're coming up with ideas that you might not have if it wasn't for the influence of who you're working with. You know?
Correct. Yeah. Again, being a judge of that energy and having sort of conversations that you would normally be having over Zoom and compared to in person is something that's kind of incomparable. So it's nice to always be reminded of that.
We got a good one. More than a splash, splish. It's really great. That's always good. Swish and splish because it's a mixer. That's a good one. I like that. Yep.
So what I would usually do in settings like these, I would be creating these in InDesign with a proper grid and system, but we're just kind of finding ways around it. When
the old makeup box from the corner.
Yep.
Yep. Been there, done that many, many times. Splished, not splashed. Shaken, not stirred. There you go. We're talking. So who would, you know what I'd love to, here's a great question for everybody. Who's our celebrity endorser or ambassador to Splish? So, you know, it's such a hard thing sometimes. Like you don't want to just take someone just because you can get them, right? But who's a good one? Like come up with could be anybody, but someone that you think would be a really great brand ambassador for Splish. I'm dying to see what they come up with, because maybe we'll throw them in one of the social medias.
For sure. If they have them on Adobe stock.
Yeah. By now, I think celebrity endorsements or ambassadors of these brands are no longer chosen. They're the actual CEOs or starter of the brand, you know? Yeah. You look at every food, beverage company out there right now, and there's so many of them attached to someone who's probably started it, which is kind of cool.
No, that kind of keeps things exciting too. It's such an interesting avenue to explore. There are lots of new celebrity products that are coming out, with like YouTubers coming up with their own products. And also just other celebrities with their own sort of beverage brands, hydration, just not only furthering their own brand, but also creating other things that they truly believe in and stand for, which is an exciting avenue too.
Oh yeah, that's always a good one as well. I like that. I had to look this guy up, David Bromstad. He looks like he'd be the perfect brand ambassador. I love that. David Hasselhoff. Wow. Yes. Okay. That's a good one. I have a great David Hasselhoff story. Do you guys want to hear
Oh, I
it?
totally do now.
Years ago, the company I worked for, we had an issue with the building we were in, and we had to move to this other building temporarily. And in this building was nothing but celebrity lawyers. So like every time we got in and out of the elevators, or whatever, there'd be some random celebrity, and never really A-listers, just kind of like, still noteworthy, right? But kind of fun. We were coming out one time, we were going down our hallway to our office, and walking towards us was this dude that I looked at my coworkers and I'm like, this guy thinks he's David Hasselhoff. Like, look at him. Like, I mean, everything, like how you can imagine David Hasselhoff looking in like the early 2000s. And next thing I know, as we're approaching him, it was him. And he gives us this like, double, like kind of like this with his hands. He's like, how's it going? And we were like, oh my God. So he's perfect. He is Splish.
Love it.
That gets my vote.
David Hasselhoff it is.
I love it. Yeah, obviously The Rock I think would be a good one. He's got way too many already.
Yeah,
right?
I feel like the Rock is kind of oversaturated with brands too currently. Kind of like Snoop Dogg himself. Snoop Dogg's and everything, The Rock's and everything.
There's a few of them that like I kind of wonder if it gets a little too oversaturated, like you said, and like you're spreading yourself so thin as obviously they have stake in it too. I think a lot of them, right? Yeah.
For sure.
Terry Crews, that would be a good one. I like that one. I like that. It's a great choice. What else do we got? Pink. Oh, she would be awesome, Bex. I really like that. She's one of my favorite singers.
Wow.
Dude, this guy's trying to be the Hoff so bad. Oops, it is him. Yep. Oh, that's great. I think we used to see him riding around town all the time. He had a Dodge Viper. Could you not pick a more, obviously Kit is the perfect car for him, but the Dodge Viper was just like the perfect car for the Hoff. Yep. I love it. I like Pink as well. I'm trying to think who would be, I'm trying to see like who are the most influencers of 2022. I'm just curious to see.
Yeah, so am I.
Gosh, there's probably some really good ones there. Looks like I'm going to hit a few articles that are not. Oh, here we go. So the most influential right now. Ooh, Zoe Kravitz.
Oh, she'd be great. Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't she'd be just perfect? Love that. What'd you did you see the latest Batman?
I really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, me too, man.
Complete tonal shift. So
I was pleasantly surprised. I heard so much like kind of negative prior to it. But man, I really, really loved it. It was a different take. I think Christian Bale's still my favorite of all time.
Same. Yeah.
Nothing will even come close. But it was neat to see a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And a different interpretation.
Matt Reeves definitely like created his own world because I mean, ultimately, like with DC superheroes, they're so often recreated.
Yes.
And I'm a big superhero buff, so like kind of seeing that in a more, I guess, adult quote unquote way is
sure
super exciting.
Yeah. I've got a good one, and I'm curious to know because I think he's just now starting to do like celebrity endorsement things and everything, and he's kind of a love him or hate him. Pete Davidson.
Pete Davidson is also literally everywhere. Like,
yeah,
I know he's the new brand ambassador for Smart Water.
And H&M too, right?
And H&M. Wow, I didn't know that.
That's a lot in just your first wave. You know
exactly. Yeah, I mean, there've been many waves of Pete Davidson, but I think I like him. Like he was probably my favorite SNL member when I was watching it. So
yeah.
Good for him.
When he was on it, because the guy was never on it.
Exactly. He's too cool for it, and I
think that was how it felt, in a lot of ways. Yeah. Ooh, yeah, Lady Gaga would be a good one as well. Let's see. Mila Kunis would be a good one. Well, she's already doing, she does a spirits and liquor company already. So that would probably not work. I think in a lot of cases, they have some things that say they cannot be, they cannot do something of an equal industry or a competitor, Yeah, that would be kind of cool. But there's so many good people that would be like unique to try. Zendaya would be a good one.
Yeah.
Although I think too, you don't want to get someone who's too number one, like, right? Like she can't get any like more famous right now. It's like kind of crazy.
True.
Probably doesn't need Splish. Splish needs her.
Someone in the chat said KSI. He's a really famous YouTuber.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, grew up watching him. So
Yeah. Didn't he start a beverage company too?
Yeah, it's called Prime. Like he started with.
That's right, Prime.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just taking off really well.
Yeah.
Just released in the UK too. Kind of sold out.
I just saw it locally here.
Really nice.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's just a like a Gatorade kind of, competitor, right? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, Barbie. Barbie has the ultimate one. I'm going to even go one step further. She says Johnny Depp, but I'm going to be like Johnny Depp's lawyer.
Oh, wow.
Shaq. Yeah, like Shaq needs another paycheck, please. Yeah, Shaq would be like, let's just change Splish to Shaq.
Yeah.
He'd be like, Shantanu, I love everything you've done here. I have one change. Let's just
pause for me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love that. I'm looking at the Time like top 100, and they have it so well done, because it's like they have it as celebrities, they have it as artists, they have it as innovators, they have titans. So these people, like, they're not just influential people, but kind of like why they are, what brought them to that level.
Yeah,
which is great. What's neat is the leaders are very like controversial folks as well. So it's kind of neat to see the way they did it. And then they have icons. They have some really good ones. I could see Adele doing this one.
Oh, wow. Sure.
Like, we can get her.
Yeah,
do you like the way I say?
Just cheap. Yeah, totally Adele. Adele would
what do you say?
Be on board for Split.
Can we just call her right now and put her on live?
Exactly. That's how easy it is to get her. So
you got her number. Let's go.
Of course I do.
I love it. So you've got a bunch here going really strong. I love that idea. Can I make one suggestion?
Yeah, go for it.
What about a drop shadow to the cans? Something to kind of pop them out from the background, because they are coming from the background. But I love seeing the fact that like drop shadows have gone in and out, right? Like you see them come, then you see them really light and kind of like not so strong. I'm seeing them now like beyond like almost 100% dark.
Yeah,
a lot of times it's kind of neat to see the difference.
I know. I really like the hard shadows too. So yeah, that's something we can definitely explore.
That would be kind of neat to see it. And what do you? I know I love talking about drop shadows primarily in Illustrator, because there's so many different ways to do it. You've got obviously filter. You can bring in a maybe a radial oval that has a gradient in it. What's your first kind of approach to building some drop shadows when it comes to Illustrator?
When it comes to Illustrator, I pretty much covered it. I personally prefer taking it onto Photoshop, because I feel like the shadows, like, you get more of a realistic feeling to it.
Yeah.
And usually what I like to do is avoid the drop shadow, but focus more on like how things would look if it was lying down too, especially for product packaging and cans. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how that shadow would be cast with the actual shape of the can, as if it was lying down instead of standing up. So yeah, that's something we can definitely explore right now with the Auto Home and the posters too. So let's do it.
Yeah, I remember, you might have remembered, I think it was at Adobe Max last year, in the keynote, they showed, I believe it was in Photoshop, it's coming soon, but it was this incredible drop shadow like generator. So if you have an item that's clipped out, maybe, transparent back, isolated like you've got with your can, it basically, with Sensei and all that stuff, it could configure a three-dimensional vibe of a realistic drop shadow.
That's awesome.
I'm
super excited for that.
Oh, like, bring it now. So good.
I mean, that's kind of like things that there've been lots of debates around AI and within design and kind of taking over our jobs. But like, I feel like there's so much other potential to be focusing on, such as that, to like the kind of work that makes our lives easier as opposed to doing the work for us.
Yes.
So yeah, when it comes to AI innovations and Dolly and Midjourney and everything, I feel like creating things along those realms and helps our lives.
Well, like, what are they supposed to do? It's like, are they supposed to stop creativity and technology? Because you could compare what we work with tools now compared to 5-10 years ago, and it's not like it's. I think a lot of times people think it's a cheat, right?
Yeah, No, honestly, I mean, there's a big debate around it, and I feel like this debate will be ongoing as well. I don't necessarily see it as a cheat, depending on how you're using it. But there's obviously work that we have to do that isn't always pretty, that isn't always fun, that isn't always like as exciting to work on or as creatively stimulating. Sometimes you just have to make things in like 100 different sizes to live in different applications. And I feel like bringing in AI to do help with something like that can definitely make our lives and jobs easier, to help us at least give us more time to focus on things that are actually more creatively stimulating and allowing us room to actually concept and build out a lot more, as opposed to doing something as maybe redundant or not as exciting, such as creating different sizes for certain things. But yeah, I'm excited to see how it all fleshes out from an artist perspective, from an illustration perspective too. It's also cool to see how you can interact with it and work on along the side. But yeah, bringing it onto design is something that I'm super excited to see how it develops. So
Yeah, that'd be great. Have you messed around with any of like the 3D components of Illustrator as well?
a little bit, yeah.
Hmm.
I'm currently on a MacBook Pro. That's a few years old, so it's never really the best, never really the best. I guess device to experiment with 3D. Kind of just brings up all the fans, but I'm super excited by that too. 3D is something I feel like is very intimidating to a lot of people, and doesn't really feel as accessible with like pricings for other softwares that are quote unquote industry standard. But of course, using Dimension and having an Adobe software and incorporating that within Illustrator as well really helps democratize 3D a lot more, bringing it onto a lot more people, allowing students to learn, making it vector too, which I think is super cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, all of those are A pluses for me.
Yeah, I know we have one airing tomorrow in office hours, and I know Andrew has done a bunch of really cool ones this week. If any of you are interested in seeing the new capabilities of 3D in Illustrator, take a look at some of those Adobe Live recordings. I'm really impressed because like it is bringing in the elements of what you have in Dimension in a way to make it very user friendly, even more so in Illustrator. I'm glad you mentioned that. Like I always felt completely intimidated by getting into anything 3D, but the way they're bringing it in slowly but surely, and now you have this incredible stuff to mess around with and build 3D stuff that can really impress your client in Illustrator is so wonderful. Love that.
Yeah, again, just making things as accessible as possible, because not everyone has the same sort of privilege and like opportunities that we have to kind of experiment and dabble with, because things kind of cost money and like not everyone has that luxury. So especially coming from a country like India, where I see a lot of super talented people not having access to at least reach their fullest potential, or just level the playing field a little bit more in terms of opportunity. I feel like steps like these are definitely super helpful.
Oh yeah. And there's so much like I even see it sometimes in my students, and not everyone can afford the most newest laptop with all the RAM and everything else. So finding your way of doing it, or at least seeing some of these techniques being shown on Adobe Live is just great to know that when you do get that moment, or you're on a good computer, or you can have that power, it's all there,
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
What do we Oh, go
I
ahead.
I definitely used to watch Adobe Live a lot as a student. I just graduated last year, and like being on it is also incredibly cool and just a great opportunity. But
That's great. So what are we putting together here? This is more of a billboard?
yeah, this is going to be a billboard that we're going to be putting on to uh, right here on this one. We're going to make it,
Nice.
again, going with the whole summer vibe that we have and we're trying to create. So thinking about like where things are going to be living in situ for with your out of home as well. So think about what the brand stands for, what you're trying to communicate, and where it's going to live, and who you're trying to appeal to. All those things are taken into consideration when building these things out for your case study and portfolio. So we currently have a few slides left. So we're creating our first out of home, and then we're going to be moving on to the posters and visual systems super quickly, and then creating a hero image. But I kind of feel like this kind of lives as a hero image in itself, but we can definitely explore and see what else we can come up with as we go along. But again, keep the suggestions coming. It's definitely cool to be reading everyone's suggestions and talking and interacting with everyone as I kind of work. So yeah.
Excellent. What we need a good headline for that billboard. And I think that's the most catchy copywriting sometimes, because you got a very short little space to give the most impactful headline. So that might be a great one from our chat room here. Give us a fantastic billboard, show-stopping headline, because I think you can put it almost behind there like you had and still be good, right?
Yeah, let's try it. Let's see what people come up with.
Yeah.
So I think we
Let's
can
see
just
what we
start.
got.
We're going to be doing something similar for the posters as well, and then mock those up once we have them ready. So thinking about patterns and how this will be presented in situ and out of home as well. So I'm kind of envisioning 3 product posters and then 3 other typographic, more messaging posters as well, just so you're creating patterns and some sort of contrast when you view it in person out on the street. So keep those suggestions coming as to what taglines we should use. And again, super excited to see those.
Perfect. My first one would be, you might as well just say like splish into summer or something to ignite the newness of summer, like we were just talking about yesterday being the first day, right?
Yeah, I love that.
That'd be good. Look at that. Splash into summer with splish. See, Voodoo, you got it down.
Let's do it.
Val knows what's up.
Let's type those out before we forget.
And then even you're a splish for every flavor, because that kind of goes with showing all the cans, which is great.
Let's have that one in and then typeset the rest as they kind of come in. Splash into every summer.
There you go. Splish splash, it's summertime bash. Oh, now we're rhyming. All right, CJ, that's a good one. I like that idea too. Like, you're always considering, if you throw in a word like bash or get together or something, it starts the brand idea. Like, you're thinking like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go buy some splish for next weekend's party. Like, it puts that into your mind, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's all about what you're trying to communicate and how you're doing it effectively. I think we can honor the audience and everyone kind of recommending everything by just putting their names on the posters too, just as a little homage. So.
Oh yeah. Good idea. Oh, they can almost be like quotes.
Yeah.
There you go. There. Endorsed by Voodoo Val.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's our brand ambassador.
Yeah.
We've made it. Val, you're that big. We got you. There you go. I love it. The neat thing too is, like, it feels almost like a testimonial, even if you just use quotations, right? It kind of makes you feel in a lot of like collateral that someone said it. It's a personal touch. I love that vibe that you can add to branding like this, particularly here, you know?
For sure. I mean, it just gives another graphic element to work with. And keeps things exciting and fresh, and I guess more relatable and more human as a brand as well.
And it's not like, the neat thing too is you're not repeating tagline after tagline after tagline. What you're doing is you've got a story of all of these taglines that kind of are inspired by the same thing or mean the same thing. So I like the idea, like, you know, when you see a commercial just far too much or a billboard far too much, then you just lose interest. But if it could change and have a different cohesive message on each one, those are the real true like creative spirits that I really love, you know?
Sure. And that's exactly what we're trying to create over here with a brand such as Splish, keeping it super fun, super light, relatable, human, and consistent too.
Have we saved this one yet?
And that's the hourly reminder, Nick.
Oh, look at me. Yeah, almost there.
Always on the clock. I love that. Thank you so much.
It's an internal alarm.
It's just like an emergency blare in your head. I love that.
Oh my gosh. I think sometimes I don't even realize that I'll be working and my left hand is rested on the Command S, like, just to be like ready to go.
Wow.
Maybe I've been forced too many times to be like, oh, I didn't save and then I lost it, you know?
Yep. Just comes with the experience.
Yeah. Why splosh, splosh when splish splash? Okay, Mo, you're giving us tongue teasers now. I love it. That looks great. It looks really, really good. Yeah. Oh yeah, there you go. All of a sudden you get in those like the layer transitions, and all of a sudden I love that you can just hover over and see which one works the best. Ooh,
Oh, those are actually kind of cool.
dang. I see a whole new extension here. This is
Exactly.
we should call it Splish After Dark or something, you
I
know?
love that. A nighttime drink as opposed to a daytime drink.
Oh, those are those little. Have you ever had something like that where it's like a weird, just chance or accidental thing has inspired something that actually went to a client?
Yeah, I mean, like that kind of happens a lot of the times especially when you're working on something as like detailed or with textures, especially like there've been lots of textures that have just been happened and created out of chance, just hovering over different
Mm-hmm.
opacities and seeing which one works the best. But yeah, that's kind of happened a couple of times, which is again keeps things fresh and fun, which I like.
Yeah. Have a splish for the summer. There you go. The dark ones and the hard lemonade one. Yeah, totally valid. Kind of reminds me of I think it's the hard lemonade of one of the brands. They completely went to like, it's got that punch color on black. Looks really, really good. Happy little nighttime cans. I love that, Carol. That's a good one. Let's splish. Yeah, that's a Barbie. That's a fantastic, simple, right to the point tagline. I love
Mm,
that.
yes.
Splish after splash. Splish get splashed. Oh, we've started something here, man. It's looking
Just
good.
keep them coming.
Yeah. So if you joined in a little late and you're just joining us, we're here with Shantanu Sharma. He is putting together a brand from scratch that we started in yesterday's episode. You can always go back and check that out either on YouTube or on Behance of part one of this. And here's a quick overview. We've got a new brand that has been created for a mix-in line of beverages, all fruit inspired. How did you describe this again before starting off the creative?
Just super fun, energetic, a summertime drink to kind of bring in the summer, keeping everything super light, fresh, loud, and just energetic.
Good. Yeah. Always good to have those keywords at hand every time, right? When you're describing these.
Solid reminder of them too, to kind of keep focusing on the task at hand, which is nice.
Yeah. Oh, I love the idea of having a pool float with the drinks on it. That's a great way to
Nice.
kind of capture summer as well. Really like the big splash behind the cans, also as well. Tried that earlier. It's a slippery slope, splished to sloshed. Okay, yes. Very, that could be the warning, right? Like, you know how we were talking yesterday of like you have to put so much stuff either legally or whatever on a lot of these
Yep.
cans. How do you have fun with it? But I love that idea of like, it's very easy to don't get sloshed, just get
Yep.
splished.
And that's a whole other like brand attribute that can happen within like when it goes out into the public. Just like it can become a verb on its own or a describing term. Splish can be like enter our vocabulary in different ways depending on how you're positioning yourself. So yeah, I really like that. That's a solid sort of assessment
Yeah.
into how things can play out.
Yeah. I know we might get into this later, but a good question I just saw a comment from Bliss. She was saying that she's putting a case study together as well right now
Mhm.
as she's working, and she says, "I don't think I'm doing mine right. I got a lot more words and a lot more context on it." And you and I spoke of that before we even started. But what's your take on the idea of like if you're building a case study, it's on your website.
Mhm.
How much content, context, type, descriptions are you putting in there?
For me, I've always been an advocate for saying more with less.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, like depending on which field you are in design, if you're a UI UX designer, right, typing everything out and spelling every detail definitely helps to the best of your ability. But as graphic designers and identity designers, this is how you communicate something super effectively, with just limited vocabulary. Try and get your message across within like a paragraph or even a sentence or two. It's because I feel like that's a helpful exercise to kind of take away. But because ultimately people who are going to be looking at your websites are recruiters or potential people who want to hire you, and they don't necessarily have the time to read through a whole story or a whole brand narrative the way you might want them to.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of have to entice them into being curious and wanting to learn more, not only through the project, but kind of hearing you present and talk about your work and go through each image visually. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here with the case study too, is build a brand narrative visually. So we're starting with the logo, keeping everything super fresh. It's your first introduction to the brand, and then a hero image. Those can be interchangeable depending on the brand and what you're trying to communicate, and then what the product actually is, and then how that plays out within social media, and then also building out a typographic and brand identity system with the out of homes that we're working on currently. So yeah, keeping things super brief, just a paragraph at a time,
Hmm.
because ultimately people just don't necessarily have the time to go through everything as much as you'd like them to.
I like it. It's a great idea to start with none, right?
Hmm.
And like you said, let the work kind of speak for itself in a way. And I think that's a great point. And Bliss, I hope that answers your question a little bit, because I know sometimes when I've had work that I've put a lot of context or type and explanations on the case study, maybe the work itself wasn't really doing its job,
Hmm.
at that point, and you had to add so much more. So I love your idea of like start with the visuals and get some eyes on it. I like to get other people to look at it, particularly non-designers. What does this look like? What does this, does this read well? Am I missing anything? Then you add it in just as needed.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, just think about like if I feel like if you fully understand something, and like fully you can fully explain something, you'd be able to explain it to a 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So I try and think of it from that perspective. It's just like, how would I explain this to someone who has no context to almost anything whatsoever? Just a complete blank slate. Not saying that 5-year-olds don't know anything, but just like think of it from that perspective. If you can put it into really simple terms and break it down as effectively and easily as possible, that just truly shows and reflects your understanding on certain things. So
Yeah.
just doing something similar when creating brand assets for that is also super helpful.
That's a good threshold. The old, can a 5-year-old look at this and kind of get it, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah, and I think it goes to a lot when anyone's building a portfolio too. I know a lot of my students will want to throw in a bunch of stuff in there, a bunch of projects, and I'm like, only have the best, right? Like you'll only be remembered for the weakest one that's in there. And if it's three solids,
Hmm.
that's so much better than maybe five that have two case studies that weren't really fleshed out, or
Exactly.
fleshed out. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I feel like just communicating what you have to communicate and also knowing that is just takes you a long way. So those soft skills, as we talked about yesterday, just helps you differentiate yourself from other designers. Because at the end of the day, the more you do something, the better you will get at it. And that's kind of how things work in design. Everybody eventually becomes a good or great designer, but not everyone becomes a great orator, speaker, presenter. So really
Good.
focusing on that kind of client-facing aspect of things, and learning how to present and talk about your work is incredibly helpful in terms of taking you to the next level. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, for sure, Bliss. You can send me that case study. I want to see it.
yeah, totally.
It reminds me too. You brought something up too. Andrew and I were talking the other day, and we were saying like, I miss doing some of the portfolio reviews that we were doing regularly on office hours, because to me that was like really everyone learns on that, including ourselves and
Hmm.
anybody watching. And it's where else are we looking at work and really critiquing it as a pretty worldwide, audience? We got to get back into doing that a little bit. It's always fun.
Of course, I mean, if like you're a teacher too, so like being an instructor kind of helps you be grounded in sort of the next generation of design consistently. So that's a super rewarding experience and something I hope to kind of be able to experience in sometime in the next few years.
Yeah.
Teaching for me is definitely a goal of mine in the next 4 or 5 years, and just focusing on establishing myself as a solid designer first, and then reaching a certain point where I feel like I'll have enough value to add to the next generation that's coming through. So yeah, I mean that sounds super exciting too. So
Yeah.
that's something I really want to explore.
How many of you all agree with me that Shantanu is just perfect to be a teacher one day? I think it's going to happen.
That means a lot. Thank you, man.
Yeah, throw a thumbs up. I'm sure everybody would agree. Do you have any recommendations for strong process case studies to look at, or the ones that you appreciate? Where do you go for some inspiration there?
I mean, just look at your favorite studios and your favorite designers too. I just learn by observing, especially when you're just starting out. Like, you can kind of mimic their sensibilities. So what used to do is I used to like look at other studios or other designers' projects that I used to really look up to or still do, and kind of think of like kind of tell myself and have a conversation with myself as to why they decided to do something a certain way. Um, why it's this image before that image, or vice versa, or think about what the decisions they made within their design do. You can also try and recreate their designs to get a better sense of their process, because you kind of learn by imitation and observation. Don't necessarily share it and pass it off as your own work, but just use it as an exercise to learn and grow as yourself, to put yourself in their shoes. Because as designers, you're supposed to have a lot of empathy. You're supposed to be able to kind of learn and understand people's behavior. So doing so from a designer's perspective first, in terms of doing so from a designer's perspective first definitely helps from someone more established. And then once you build it, you kind of grow and develop as a designer and build your own sensibilities based on that. That just kind of help you grow. So that's something that I definitely used to do. So I started off as an illustrator, and I just used to like copy other people's illustrations when I was like 12 or 13 years old. You just learn how to do that. And then of course, after a certain point, you develop your own sort of sensibility, and you're like, no, I don't want to do things the way this person's doing it. I like this decision that I want to be making. And then once you kind of get the hang of that and keep continuing that sort of spirit and sensibility, your taste grows, your sensibilities grows, and your skills further develop. So yeah, that's a helpful exercise as well.
Oh, there's so many good examples when you look at agencies, or I've even found you can look when you look around and you see a great case study somewhere or some blog you're following, always look at the agency that did it. And I've created a really great like bookmark list of all those agencies that have created some really good work, particularly good case studies. And I think that's the way to start looking at it, to see like, I've said this to a lot of students and I say it to myself, you could look you can equal the playing field online with Pentagram if you really wanted to. Like you, Shantanu, as your own brand little agency, could look just as impressive digitally because it is literally on a screen, right?
Yeah. And you're in charge of your own narrative too. So
exactly.
making the most of that is definitely helpful. Like it's your portfolio, it's your decisions at the end of the day. So the more you're making the most out of that and like really taking a hold of your own sort of brand and what you're trying to achieve and communicate, just take you miles ahead. So
yeah, and brands can do the same thing. You could be this splish, you could be two people running it out of a garage, and you can make it look this good and be just as good as the brand that's spending millions. You know, I think that's the one thing like we keep forgetting is that equal playing ground, because of we're all using the same tools, we all use the same principles. They might have 400 more people, but it could work, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's also what makes it more impressive too. If you can do it, if you yourself as a lone designer can do the job of as many people and wear those hats and learn how to develop it along the way too, or just making yourself a more valuable asset to potential people who want to hire you or work with you. So the more you can do, the better.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my philosophy, and that was ingrained in me coming out of college. Going to SVA too, is that just wear as many hats as you can, because ultimately as students you're learning and growing so much in such a limited amount of time. Like your journey from like within the 2 years or the 4 years that you're in college is so immense, and making the best use of that time is incredibly important, because working for the last year, you just don't have the same sort of luxury of time that you would necessarily have when you were a student, because you were kind of in charge of your own schedule, and you didn't have to deal with meetings and client relationships and things like that. So yeah, just make the best use of it, I feel.
That's great. All right. From Voodoo Val, she's got this. This is a question for both Shantanu and Nick. How do you start setting the course for achieving a long-term career goal? How do you start moving down the path into the new realm of professional success? What do you got, Shantanu?
Ooh, that's a good question. Like,
have you thought of long-term?
Definitely, yeah. So coming out of college, I took a class and we had to kind of write our 5-year goals. So I just started like this as to what I really wanted to achieve, and like super baseline things that are not necessarily concrete. So I want my work to be featured in Times Square. I want to have gallery openings and further develop my skills as an illustrator and as an artist as well, not only as a designer. As a designer, I want to be working on global campaigns that reach millions of people. Putting those things in like actualizing those goals definitely helps, because you have a concrete plan to kind of work towards and reach. So yeah, I'm trying to think of other goals I had. I created a small book that was just like my 5-year plan, and my 5-year goals, and it's a little bit of a checklist that I revisit every few months to see how things are going. But yeah, I mean, it's just all about actualizing things, because once you have a clear vision as to what you want to do, it really helps.
Sure.
So I know I want to be teaching in 5 years. I know I want to be working on global campaigns. I'm a mid-level designer right now. I want to be a senior designer in a couple of years. Just thinking from career perspective and like other goals with where your work is going, and how much work you're doing, and where it's going to be reached is super important from that perspective too. So
That's great. Yeah, not that doesn't sound that impossible.
yeah.
I love it. And I think you're really smart in kind of like not only having them established, but then re-looking at them, like making sure you're keeping up with that, because it's very easy to get so wound up in the daily things that you're not looking at the long-term things. And when you've done the job and written it down, it's very tough to kind of like keep that momentum going. But they sound like really good ones in a lot of ways, where, shoot for the stars as much as you can. I always think that's kind of like, why not? Like if that's what it is, if that is a goal of yours, it might be totally different from somebody else's, but who is anyone to kind of say like, oh, well, I'm not thinking that way, I'm thinking this way. Okay, well, that's yours, right?
Exactly. And things may sound intimidating or impossible, but like once you actually say them or write them and make a list as to what you can achieve and see that development, you kind of realize that it's not as difficult or as intimidating as it initially seemed. So
Yeah.
it's always a healthy and useful process to have to actualize.
Oh, for sure. I would say too, I think in a lot of ways, what I would consider a way to look at a long-term goal, or to have, or even how to start one, is I was always very impressed with the people around me that were in positions that maybe were a few steps above me. And if that was the path, then how do I get there? I think it really depends on, hopefully, the influence of the people around you a lot of times. That's why I'm still such a huge kind of advocate for the creative office, the space that you get to work in. Hopefully, if it's all good and everyone feels comfortable, it's what we've missed over the last few years is that vibe, and I was lucky enough in my agency days to work, shoulder to shoulder with some of the most incredible people. And if there was someone I got to see every day in a role that I wanted, then I asked that person. I just said, what would it take? How do I get there? Use them as a role model, use them as a mentor. With a very specific goal in mind, right? It's not just like, how do I get better? It's more like, how do I become where you're at? Like, if that's what would make you happy, if that is your goal. And I think a lot of times just having those people around you is the first step. If you're working too much remote and too much solo, where are you getting that influence from? Hopefully you're making up for that in some other way. Maybe I love seeing people who are doing a lot of remote work and they have great relationships with the people. They're doing good things online, to keep that culture alive, because it could fizzle very quickly if you're not keeping up with that.
Totally.
How do you guys keep that spirit alive working so remotely? Are you guys doing anything to kind of cultivate a really good work culture?
At Widen, yeah, we do a lot. I mean, there's just so many of us, and it's such a huge agency. So I guess we have like lots of events. We used to have like karaoke competitions on Zoom where it was pre-recorded and have the people kind of vote in on that. So the culture is definitely very people focused, and it's just very much for the people too. So I wouldn't say I've really missed out on the culture too much. I try and go to Portland. That's where I work, the office I work out of, quite regularly, about like a month or two, every couple months. But yeah, I mean, the culture is incredibly great. And like, that's something that I didn't really anticipate or know that I would appreciate as much kind of coming out of college too, because ultimately you're so focused on the work as a student and kind of like quote unquote making it. But like having it and being able to experience that in a place like this is great. We have like happy hours every Thursday. I'm actually currently in the New York office in this beige void. So because the Wi-Fi is just so much faster here. So being able to kind of experience that and like know that there's people and energy around you, not only like when I work out of the Portland office, but being able to come to the New York office, because that's where I'm currently based, is incredibly rewarding. So
yeah, you have to find those ways to make it work and make it better, you
Hmm.
know? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so many people have relied on Behance and this community to be their work culture.
Yeah,
It sounds funny, but it's so true. I've seen it for the last 2 years. It's incredible how great this becomes your resource. These become your coworkers in a lot of ways. And you never know; those are the people that years down the road could be influential in getting you a new career path or something unique because they know you so well. I think that's the thing, right? You want people to know your reputation and you as an artist to know, can they refer you? Can they bring you in somewhere years down the road, right? You would
of
do the same for
course.
them.
Exactly. And like if anyone wants to reach out and like wants help in any way possible, especially if you're a student, you can like reach out to my Instagram or my Behance or my email. I'm sure they're all in the description, but happy to help whenever anyone needs anything, because ultimately it's all about feeding the next generation and ensuring the appreciation for design, not only in the United States, but all over the world in places where they might not be as appreciated.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
and you're really cultivating and building that sort of environment. So that's something that's very near and dear to my heart, and hope to continue to contribute to in whatever way I possibly can. So feel free to reach out at any time. Honestly,
That's
happy to
great.
help.
Yeah, that's infectious. That's the kind of stuff that's like you get involved in that and it becomes almost like contagious, right? You're like, I got to keep doing this. And then you see other people giving back and you want to do the same thing.
Exactly.
It's really
I
good.
mean, we're in the position we're in because of so many other people who've come before us and have helped us along the way. So being able to contribute to that and kind of knowing and sticking to your roots is something that's definitely very important in terms of building out your career as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. I'm assuming I'm going to ask chat this, like, how's everybody anticipating Adobe Max this year?
Oh
I'm
wow, yeah.
excited because it's a hybrid, which is fantastic. And I can't wait to be, are you going to be going? Are you going to be live? Are you going to be showing up via the hybrid? What are you doing?
Well,
Any plans yet?
I hope to plan something. I would love to come on and hop on Adobe Live again and do something either remotely or be able to travel to LA. So
Yeah.
yeah, haven't made any concrete plans yet, but hope to do that soon. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Now's the time to start thinking, guys. If you can
Exactly.
make it, it's such an incredible energy. You can't match it once you're
Exactly.
there. I can't wait. We're working on some really fun stuff that I think we'll be able to announce in the next few months. But there's such a cool. The community there is just the best. It's like taking everything here that lives online and it becoming reality.
Yeah.
It's just a blast, you know.
Super excited to see what you've been working on and how
I
that's going
hope
to be
so. I
contributing
hope we
to.
can do it.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it should be really good. This is looking good, man. What other questions do you guys, if there's any other questions, because we've got about 18 minutes or so, 19 minutes before we'll get into our spotlight. So give us another question or two while we're finishing this up. Yes, Val, you're so ready for that. I think you need to propose your own workshop and put it together right now. What would it be,
Exactly.
Val? What would your dream workshop be that you could make and produce? I want to hear it. Tell us what that is. This looks great, man. I think too you're keeping a very there's a beachy summer vibe
Hmm.
really happening almost naturally just by the color palettes, the images and the lifestyle vibe behind some of the photography. It's really
Yeah.
nice.
Again, thinking about where you want your brand to live, who you're marketing it to, who's going to be seeing these things is incredibly important. So when dealing with a case study and you're putting this in your portfolio, putting things in situations that kind of appeal and reflect your brand standards, it always just helps elevate it because ultimately it's the finer details and the things that people really look out for, whether you're detail oriented, whether you're thinking about things from a storytelling or narrative perspective. So this is a summer drink, so naturally it should be in situations that feel and reflect a summertime feeling. So that again, once you have your strategy and your rationale in place, certain things just fall into place so much easier just because you have something to work towards and you have a solid rock and a foundation to build upon. So
That's
thinking,
great.
yeah, thinking different things from that perspective always helps.
Hmm. Sometimes it happens naturally, and I know sometimes I can go off on a weird tangent because you're just building and building, and you almost have to look back and be like, whoa, I went off the rails and
Yeah,
something does not look like the brand here. Right?
exactly. So just thinking from things like keeping things super consistent, but also just breaking out of that sort of consistency and system whenever you possibly can is definitely an exercise that's very exciting to me too. So
Mm-hmm.
again, I just have a lot of fun thinking systematically, but like it's just a joy in its own to go as crazy as possible, then reel it back in. Um, because I'm naturally a maximalist in my sensibility in a lot of cases. I love color, I love detail-oriented things that are like super busy, but like testing that sort of sensibility and breaking out of your comfort zone is also incredibly worthwhile. So doing that as much as possible and being
Good.
aware of that is incredibly helpful. So that's why putting things in a grid like this and seeing how things sort of connect with each other is incredibly helpful too. So you can kind of pick and see um, where things are consistent and where things are not, and where things are breaking out of that. So it's important to do that with your own work and multiple different projects as well. To kind of see a through line, whether there are certain things and sensibilities that you're applying to almost every other project in your portfolio. So laying your portfolio out in a grid is incredibly useful and helpful. I didn't know that, but I'm very active on Instagram in terms of posting my work, because ultimately I believe you're making work for other people to see and view. And then it all just helps you view things in a grid in a smaller setting and kind of put yourself in your audience's shoes as well. So seeing things in a grid and picking out certain things and being a little bit nitpicky and a little bit hard on yourself, but also in a more positive way.
That's good.
It's good.
That's a great trait to have. I think a lot of times too, I have very little patience when I'm building some stuff. I want to just see the end result like now, and so I have to like purposely slow myself down to just make sure you're checking off all the things. So if you have an agenda at the beginning, I love the idea of like at least putting the objective at the beginning of my work, right?
Of course.
What was the goal here? Like how can you look through this and understand what I did, if it was successful or not, if I didn't give you some objective of what my goal was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
And then do you get into showing your process much in your case studies?
Wherever it's applicable, like I feel like it's such a messy process too. And when you're working on certain things and you have a lot of variations and explorations that you think you kind of wish were used, that's when I kind of show my process. I'm a bit precious with my process in terms of sharing it with as many people in my portfolio especially. But seeing the sketches, especially if you're a junior designer coming into that sort of field, is definitely helpful to get a better idea about your sensibility and thinking. So from that perspective, it definitely helps. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm either or depending on the project and how the process has been. So sometimes the process is great and it's worth showing. Sometimes it wasn't, and it's better left aside. So it's important to self-edit and know when to kind of show those things. So
I agree. What does Chad think? I'm curious what you think. Do you want to show process or not show process in your case studies? And by process, I mean, like the sketches, the maybe the stages before you got somewhere. Do you feel that's important or not? Maybe based on some of the feedback you've been getting or the last few times you've showed your case studies to folks. So we're asking you guys process or no process in your case study. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Mm-hmm. So I'll wait to see where everybody is, because I feel like my opinion changes all the time with that one. So let us know, process or no process. That will be interesting to see, because I got a second question after that I want to see. You want to show process. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to assume that is show process, because like wanting is different than do you need to. Like I think no one wants to. But I think it's a matter of like, it's like showing a math solution or an answer without the equations and the way you got there, you know, in a lot of ways. So we've got this. I want to show process, but sometimes my process is just so messy I don't. Yep, I agree. I've heard that people like seeing the process, correct? Show some, not all parts of making the sausage appropriate for all audiences. I totally agree. That's exactly like my take now is like, you're right. Sometimes it can be very messy because if it's just for you and if it's just for your way to get there, does it need to be shown off? Probably not. But
Yeah.
I guess it's that fine line of like, what do you show? Show just a little and don't give it away too. I think a lot of times too, I've been noticing I don't want to show too much because it's kind of like, if you look at your foundation of how you build a brand and what questions you ask your clients and things like that, a lot of that could be considered your proprietary information.
Of course. And
You
there's
know?
also just certain skills and tips and tricks that you've kind of explored that you want to keep in handy for the future. So
Mm-hmm.
you're also kind of, whenever you're working on a project, you're also kind of building that library as well of things that you want to, things that you've done but didn't really make the cut, but have the potential to be used again in the future. So
Exactly.
knowing when to show those things is incredibly important. So sometimes you might need to be a bit precious with things in those situations.
Yeah, that is very true. I've told some students this because I think a student, maybe in their first year or two, should probably show a little bit of it. Whereas I think once you become a little bit more established, maybe you don't have to. There's not, you have enough of a legacy to not have to show that process, I would say.
Yeah.
But sometimes I've even told them, go back and kind of, if it doesn't look good enough, but you have to show something, redo it. Like redo the process like a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, or the thing I like a lot is shots of yourself in action at the drawing table, an overhead shot of you doing the sketches or whatever it might be. Having someone take those pictures while you're working, or even, call them fake in process shots later down the road. The agencies do it, like, why not?
Exactly. I mean, ultimately, you're in charge of your own narrative. So the best way you can kind of have that and reflect that to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve is again, you can literally do whatever you want to do as long as you think it's right and think it's worth. So
yeah. How do you identify what steps should be included throughout the development process of a design? Again, I think limiting it to a very little amount, right? Like just the core, just the, I think, and that might be different for each project. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely different. Like whether it's like sketches for the logo and like different explorations that you had. So I could potentially, if I was happy with a few of these logo options, I could have like a GIF of kind of rotating through all these different options that I kind of explored based on the themes that I was also, and the strategy that I was exploring as well. If I wasn't happy with this label and went with this label, but I also kind of like this label too, that's something I could potentially show as well. Think about things that you wouldn't mind showing and you think would still be beneficial for other people to know that you worked on or at least tried. And then that could be like a solid foundation or a good rationale to include things.
That's a great idea. I love that idea. And even Val said that, just putting in a GIF that shows the cycle even throughout the stages. That's a nice, clean way to show it. And you can and also too, motion is so important in any application or visual representation of your portfolio. So right, if you don't have that, a cool thing to do is to make a lot of that and get some instant motion and movement in your portfolio. And I think it's a way of like, really attacking two things there with one solution.
Yeah. I mean, motion just helps elevate a brand narrative so much more, whether it's a logo animation or even like over here with a case study like this, there's so much more potential to include things that that goes beyond the sort of list and the solid foundation or baseline that we have currently over here. So
perfect.
There's so many different ways you can explore and add on to this project. You can create a website, you can create a fictional store for it, you can create t-shirts, mock-ups of tote bags. Every branding project has a tote bag. It's incomplete without it, as we were talking about before. But yeah, just like think about different ways and things and unique applications where these things could live. Always go beyond the brief and see what could happen. And that's something that I really wanted to explore and try to kind of live by when creating my student projects, at least.
Yeah, totally agree. It's looking good there.
Yeah.
So you're putting together kind of another almost billboard sidewall inspiration thing here?
Just showing different places where this could live. different applications across different sizes. So we have a horizontal billboard, we have some vertical out-of-home posters and wheat pastings. Just think about the perspective of the person actually viewing it in real life, and what kind of energy you're trying to convey or communicate within that sense. So yeah, it's always nice to see things out in the wild, as even if they're just mock-ups, because it just helps you visualize and actualize the project process as well. It's kind of like setting yourself a goal.
Yeah.
You're basically writing it down by creating mock-ups such as these, because to help visualize and actualize the sort of process that you want to achieve too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It brings it
everything's
to
connected.
life. The
Exactly.
applications, it like someone said it a couple of weeks ago, and I remember like going, "Gosh, I've heard that before. But why is it resonating with me now?" Was this idea that brands live and breathe. They should show some way of how they would live out in the wild, like you said. But to me, I think it just shows their voice, it shows their attitude, it shows their personality, even more so when you get something like this. You
Yeah,
know.
totally.
So you're just going. This is which one is this? A side, like this is like a poster to the side of a wall.
Yeah, correct. So
Yeah.
it's if you're walking down the beach and there's like a hoarding or a wall, and yeah, that's the sort of imagery that you'd expect to see when you're out and about in the wild. So again, thinking about the context that you're in and the context that you want to be living in, and where the project should be living and breathing, and kind of exploring too. So that's something super exciting, and like it really helps build out the brand. So yeah, I mean, like it's shaped out pretty well, and like I hope everyone else who's contributed to the project too so far has been incredibly happy with it, because
Yeah, man.
ultimately it's something that we've created together, and that's kind of the exploration and the exercise that we wanted to achieve. Putting me on the spot, making sure I'm like quick on my feet, designing like a whole brand identity in like just like 3.5 hours or maybe less. So putting that all together has been super cool. And like, yeah, let me know what else you want to see in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Chet. So this is Chet's idea. We're going to get to our spotlight in about 5 minutes, and then we're going to have a good amount of time to really kind of add in one or two things here. What's missing? What do we need? Bring us some merch ideas, some mock-up ideas. What else are we missing that we can add and Shantanu can put in here within the minutes remaining? While you're doing that as well, this looks great, man. I love seeing the recap and just kind of it feels like when I think of the words that we had at the very beginning, we're on track. I see refreshing all over this, right?
Yeah, totally. And it's a summary drink that's loud, that's expressive, that's just fun, that brings in the summer a lot more.
Yes.
So we're telling a narrative through our imagery. We've got social strategy as well, reflecting our copywriting muscles from the lovely folks in the audience. Again, just putting things in situ and out of home and situations too, and like thinking about where things are going to live on the beach in tropical areas. This could be on a boardwalk to the beach. Thinking about the sky and like the art direction for your case study images is incredibly important too. Creating out-of-home assets, using the typographic system, keeping things super simple, super fun, exciting, energetic, making sure the typography and the colors are doing most of the heavy lifting in terms of the brand messaging. So yeah, it's been super cool. I mean, like this is what we started out with. It's just like these a few letters on a blank
You finished the
screen.
game show.
Exactly. And then just like it's brought to life through so much color, positivity, energy. That's been the help of like everybody watching in the last 2 days. So that's awesome. And then to kind of give a refresher, if you're just joining, to like people who've seen it so far or haven't been a part of the journey, is like we started with like certain interactive elements, asked for name suggestions that Philip, who unfortunately doesn't seem to be here, came up with. So, and then creating certain different applications and different logo variations for that, and keeping things super interactive. And everyone voted on using number 3 as their favorite suggestion and favorite logo type and lockup. And then just going about creating a packaging system and label system using consistent patterns that kind of reflect the logo type and the angular nature of that. And then building out the identity and packaging system on its own. So super cool to see how it's kind of all fleshed out together. So
wonderful. Yeah. I think we've got overwhelmingly t-shirts. So the first thing people want to see, I'm gonna take a just a guess here from our response. I love that too because you know what's neat about the T-shirt is it's everything else seems like a contained space that we have, right? The brand lives in a square or
Yeah.
with sides, and like, how does the brand now work with where you want it to be a little bit more open, a little bit more like freestyle on
Hmm.
a T-shirt? You know, what's your first kind of idea, or where would you even start to start thinking about that? We got about 2 minutes or so before we're going to run into the spotlight. Maybe just a quick brainstorm. What do you think?
Cool. I mean, like it's our typography is very bold, loud, and energetic. Something like this on the back of a t-shirt could definitely be really cool and exciting. Um, Again, thinking about the colors, what I really like about merchandise is that you can really go crazy with it, but I also try and make sure things are still grounded and a bit simple because my style isn't entirely the most exciting. So I try and make merchandise and things that I would necessarily like to wear or people I know wouldn't necessarily like to wear, interact with on a day-to-day basis. So keeping things super like fresh, simple, not entirely too in your face, depending on who you're trying to appeal to. Um, but keeping it super typographic, using the assets that we have within our patterns and maybe some smaller type to keep it super trendy and fresh can definitely help just to get our message across. But yeah,
Yeah, it's like keeping the same brand principles alive, right?
exactly.
But also too, this gives you a chance to be like, uh, yeah, you're right. There's that fine line between you can just have the S with the exclamation mark, and that
Hmm.
might just be enough on a T-shirt, or do you cover it with splish repeated 100 times? It's like,
Yeah,
where do you fall into those spaces? Maybe the fun thing to do too is to like show you and the team a good variety of where this could work, because
of
like
course.
no one just wants to be a walking billboard, right?
Yeah. I mean, advertising is everywhere. It's so in your face. So thinking of like different ways to kind of express that, especially something as like unique or I guess mundane as a t-shirt is something that's it's kind of like a business card. Like from our conversation before, it says how are you uniquely approaching something like this, or something as like overdone as a business card. So a
Yeah.
t-shirt's pretty overdone. Everybody has a t-shirt. How are you doing it differently? But how are you still adapting that same sort of design and sensibility to something that's again usable but still different but fits in the brand.
Yeah, perfect. Let's stop right there. We could take a look. What we'll do is we're going to kind of take a look over at our artist spotlight, and I'm
Mhm.
going to, Shantanu, I'm going to let you introduce because you're good friends with
Of
this incredible
course.
artist, right?
It's this incredible designer that I know happens to be one of my closest friends. I'm a huge advocate for bringing people up and like making sure if I have an opportunity, ensuring that people around me have the same sort of opportunities too, and bringing people around you up because ultimately it's can be an isolating experience and it's all about people and community.
That's
So
great.
this designer is Hinojosa. She's a great friend and an even better designer. We actually worked. She also went to SVA, just graduated last year, the same time I did, and she now works at Jones, Knowles and Ritchie, another big agency that's kind of similar to Wieden and Kennedy, but a bit more design focused. She's working on some exciting things for some huge brands, but this is kind of a lot of her student work and a lot of the work that she's done in the past that I'm a huge fan of. I just love her sensibility, her sense of color, the sort of excitement that she brings with work. This is one of my favorite projects of hers. It's called Hunty. Um, it's again keeping things super brief with her explanations, with the task of dressing up dollar store items to appear more luxurious. Mo created Hunty, a cosmetics line created purely for the drag queen community. Hunty prides themselves on realness, which is why the back of each packaging you can find real life stories from the most iconic and sickening queens. Again, super solid, self-explanatory introduction to her project. It's very energetic in terms of the sort of design language she's creating with the patterns that she has on the sides of the boxes and the super dominating and exciting typography. Really dialing in on the audience and who she's trying to appeal to. And I know this Sunday is Pride, and so it's just a good project to highlight as well. Again, building out the brand and identity system, not only just through hair extensions, but hunty lashes, good solid copywriting, good use of smaller typography and color as well. Solid use of imagery, thinking from graphic languages from that perspective. I love the sort of modified typography to refer to like eyes or eyelids a little bit with the lashes too. It's a good subtle call out, even with the nails, like the round tip of your finger. just subtle things like that that
Yeah.
are interesting to kind of find and explore as you're kind of delving deeper into projects is very exciting. And I just love these posters, how energetic they are. They're rooted in art history, but they're still present and has an eye for the future and in the more present and modern sensibility as well. And the color overlays are really nice. The use of imagery and like secondary and primary type is very effective. Again, super communicating things and how things should look in your outer homes and where they're living, thinking about social strategy. All these things are super important. Creating a website as to where it could live really helps with the brand and make it come to life. So
That's
um,
great.
yeah, super exciting work. Her work is very energetic, very colorful, very bold. Um, this was a rebrand for a small business, actually around the corner from where I am in New York City. It's a Mexican folk art store in New York, inspired by papel picado, pecked paper, a traditional Mexican paper decoration used for festivals, birthdays, and other customs. And then you can clearly see the inspiration for the logo type over here with the ribbed edges and the sort of modified typography within the counters of the R's and the A's over here too. Really calling back and creating a whole custom typeface for that, which is just an impressive feat on its own, using sort of ornaments calling back to Mexican culture and the pecked paper, and then using that as a further inspiration for the bags too is just incredibly impressive. All of these are different and custom, so it's really cool to see how you can take one sort of visual cue as an inspiration and build it out into so many different ways as she's doing over here, which is exciting. Again, thinking about like what other things and other assets you can create. It's a small Mexican folk store, so obviously the budget isn't as high, so you want to keep it rooted. So keeping things, everything like notepads such as these that aren't as expensive to recreate, creating chalk signs and custom typography for that. Custom hoodies and clothing, which is also just great. I love these illustrations and how they've been created and the use of texture to kind of ground them into making things feel more gritty and more approachable too.
That's great.
Yeah.
Love that stuff.
And this is like one of my other favorite projects of hers. She created a huge book about flowers and silent films. It's a curated coffee table book of stills from silent movies that use plants and flowers as plot devices for a simple set decoration. It's such a simple idea. And this honestly has no reason to exist, but it's so interesting to kind of create that and think of that perspective and kind of flip through the pages as you go along too. So she also created another custom typeface inspired by hoardings of like custom movie theaters too that you see.
Yep.
And then her use of color, highlighting the flowers. I worked closely alongside her while she's working on this, and like I knew the amount of research that she had to go through to do this, watching and going through archives of movies and image stills and watching movies as well. So being a part of her process as well, it definitely gives me a newfound appreciation and for all her work too. And it's super inspiring to have a friend like that as well, just because you can bounce ideas off each other, see what else can come with, and constantly push and inspire one another as well. It always just helps really helps you grow more as a designer, but also brings you closer as friends and helps you be more honest in certain situations. So super lucky to at least know someone like her who's as committed, as passionate about her work, and just as talented as she is. So yeah.
That's great. I love that you would never guess. Like, I love looking at one work compared to the next, and it doesn't even look like it's the same artist. Like, to me, I think it was going to something I wanted to chat with you about too, which is the idea of generalist versus specialist. And it's like, I almost look at this and I think Mo's just a specialist at design, but a generalist at what she can create and make. Right?
Exactly.
It's kind of you can be both. You could choose something that is so specific, but if the style and the vibe changes for everyone, this is wonderful. You know?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately approaching things different, everything has a different solution or a different outcome. So approaching things with that mindset and keeping different things and flexing different sensibilities is so helpful. And this is all student work. And if I saw this as a working professional, I wouldn't think it was student work either. So that's just the level that she's at as well, and was at as she was a student too. She's a great motion designer as well. Again, it's super simple using patterns and solid typography, just even subtle details like the sort of scratchy frames and details that are looping in just add a whole other dimension to certain things. I love this frame and little still of the U coming at you.
Yeah.
And so again, super fresh, very exciting, energetic, but still, again, not everything feels and looks the same, which I really love. And this is actually one project that we worked on together during our senior year at the School of Visual Arts. It was a yearbook for SVA. This was a completely remote project. We were all on Zoom in different parts of the world. We had people in New York, people like somewhere scattered in Utah and New Jersey, and I was in India. And just working late hours and just communicating on that and working together on making a physical object that could eventually go to print. It was a whole other challenge on its own. So thinking about art direction for that, creating custom typography for this, so working together with her was definitely a great experience too, and along with the other team members that we had. So yeah, I mean, it's nice to be friends and also be able to have a working relationship together, because ultimately you value a person you trust's opinion a lot more, and a person you kind of look up to. So having that sort of ear and like having a relationship where you can be as honest with someone in terms of creating work is great, because she's the most brutally honest person I know when it comes to my work. I can show her something and she won't miss a beat, and she will tell me it's bad. And that's rare, I feel, because like ultimately, like she's not sparing my feelings, and I don't take it to heart, because ultimately the feedback isn't about me as a person, it's about the work that I created. So being
That's
able
great.
to separate that and have a relationship with someone who has that sort of sensibility is great. So yeah, I feel super lucky to have that.
That's great. I want to ask Mo, how is Shantanu at giving back feedback to
Oh my
your
God.
work?
I see her in the chat.
Please let us know. Got to have it both sides here, man.
Exactly. Only fair. Only fair. That's a solid question. I'm sure her ego is incredibly inflated at the moment. So
No, this is,
that's the
I love
least
that
I can do.
I love that you're spotlighting her and exactly. And I think you have to have people like that, that not only you will respect and kind of love to work with or love their values, whatever, but there's also that idea of like, you really rely on their critique, on their
Exactly.
opinion as well. And to have that at a young age, and to have that like through those zones of moving from school to real world, it's probably the most important time to have that realness,
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure. I mean, it's just going to be super beneficial, helps you build thicker skin, keeps things super exciting, and like just on your toes, as this whole exercise has been too.
I love
Um,
it. He's really good on feedback, but I will cry if he doesn't like it. Oh, that's awesome. Actual tears. I love
yeah.
it.
I also have
Mo, I was
oh,
going to
sorry.
ask, oh, go ahead. Keep going, bro.
Oh no, I have a section in my website too, where I just highlight all my friends and like other people in the creative field who I definitely think people should reach out to. And I would encourage everyone, if you're in a creative field or a similar field, to having friends like that, to just keep them on the spotlight, because ultimately it's a community that you're trying to create. You're all in this together. You know how competitive the field and the landscape is. So just having a section just for your friends, being able to spotlight people is incredibly important, because if you're on a journey and you're getting somewhere too, it's important to take people along with you. So whenever
Yeah.
you pass on an opportunity, recommend people you think would be a good fit. Just think of others and put them at the forefront as much as you're thinking and working for yourself, because it's good to have achievements and do things on your own, but it's not great to like it's even better to share them with other people. So
And I think it's just a beautiful thing to see if someone just catches that in glance, that
mhm.
you are highlighting a few friends of your that are in the same exact field as you are. I think there's just a really good collaborative kind of like positive thing in seeing that if someone's actually looking towards you as a possible hire or something. That's just really good community driven spirit right there.
It's all about community.
You know? That's great. Yeah, I agree, Val. Mo, the work is fantastic. Mo, what are you most proud of? I'm just curious to know of what he showed. What is the thing that you are the most proud to kind of show off? So I think we all have that one. I love the Hunty. That's really incredibly done. And again, too, when it's more than just a rebrand, but it's kind of a reimagined take on something. That to me is what can really talk. And going back to what Bliss was saying earlier, how much do you add? How much context do you put in there? All Mo added was a really great introductory paragraph, and there's not much more, because I really feel like there's good content on all these images to tell that story without needing more paragraphs.
Correct. Yeah.
You know?
Say more with less.
That is my number one line in class, because I say it all the time. And I say it because it is the hardest thing to do. It is, no one's mastered that, right? How do you say more with less? You know, particularly in logo design. Like, I think that's the one thing that can separate a student work from professional work. Is a student logo could typically be too complex, too complicated, too many elements, not focused and stripped down to saying the most with the least.
Yeah, correct. I mean, that comes with maturity in design and experience as well. And that's definitely reflected in her work too. So it's great.
That's great. That's great. All right, man. We've got about 10 to 12 minutes left.
Let's do it.
You got a t-shirt to make, my friend.
I do.
I think you're going to be doing a t-shirt and a tote bag in the next few days, next few minutes here.
Let's do it.
One thing I love too, you seem very organized with your files and your process here as well. And I think that is 100% something notable to talk about with young designers, any designer, right? Like you put in a lot of work here to get this pretty organized, huh?
Of course. Yeah. Ultimately, you're just having, I mean, it's sort of an intimate experience going through your files in front of people too. So
I know.
Nice. But yeah, ultimately, you want to make sure things are easily like visible and able to be found. So thinking from things from that perspective is just making your life easier and so much better. So, yep. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, you want to keep things incredibly accessible to yourself and for the future and like when you're working on things. So having things on the whim and knowing about everything is just helpful, makes your lives easier and helps you work better with other people as well. So you're not only just working on these files on your own. Sometimes you might be passing these things to other designers, your client sometimes, depending on the nature of the project and the scope of the work. But you just have to always think about like, if someone else had these files, what would they think? Again, that sort of empathy just comes with how much you grow and how much experience you have as well. So constantly thinking about that from that perspective.
And you want to have something right on the spot. You know, you have that incredible vintage tee mock-up somewhere.
Exactly.
Right? So keeping yourself really organized, you can save hours in a week. You really can.
Totally. Know? I mean, it just makes your workflow way faster. You think about once you know where everything is, it just makes your life easier, honestly. Like there's really not much else to say about that. So
yeah, I love it. I think even if you have some extra time or if there's a break or a weekend, it's a good time to kind of go through your system and organize yourself as best as you can, because it will pay off in the long run.
Totally.
It really will. Oh, great. Yeah, we're bringing back the S exclamation mark. I love it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a good smaller setting for it to live in, and you'll probably have the splishes in the back. So
there you go. I love it. Yeah, I agree with you, Bex. I think we got to get a Voodoo Val fresco workshop going for Max. Let's start the campaign. Oh, I love that. Even just the whole vintage vibe of that shirt. It looks like it's gone through the washer and dryer a good 100 times.
A little bit too much.
Looks good. Looks really good.
Thanks.
Yeah, I love that idea too of what merch would you do? There's got to be a linear kind of connection. There's got to be some linkage to the brand, what they would actually create, not just the merch of the moment, you know?
Exactly. I mean, it should all feel connected and tied in and just consistent at the end of the day. So
yeah,
having
exactly.
that is incredibly important. So For the back of the t-shirt, I'm just thinking we repeat the logo, just keep it
Mm-hmm.
super punchy in your face, maybe some smaller type for hierarchy, because I've always said if there's something big that exists on your canvas, there should also be something small just to add that visual tension.
Yep.
Um, so again, keeping things a bit, you can just align those and then include those, keeping things super scrappy, not necessarily having things on its own artboard because you're just going to copy and paste this and then eventually delete it. So
Yeah. Got a few questions while you're putting together the t-shirt. What are the most important skills to learn now within the field of graphic design? There's so much you can do. It can be overwhelming deciding where to focus when choosing practice projects.
mhm.
Give me your top 2 or 3 most important things you think you've got to make sure you're showing off in your portfolio.
Just know how to set typography at its core is like the most fundamental and basic thing in terms of theory and when you say it out loud. But you'd be surprised how many designers or students in college are still learning or like might struggle with that. Or setting type is just the most basic thing as a graphic designer. It's kind of table stakes. So knowing how to effectively do that and grow that sensibility is definitely important. And then think about like, well, what else you want to be doing with your career and what else you want to be focusing on. Motion is an incredibly useful asset that if you know as a solid graphic designer and have that sort of muscle in your toolkit is definitely worth exploring, and it just makes you a more valuable asset to whoever you're working with and for. So I would say motion, depending on whether you want to pursue it or not, but at its core, just knowing how to set typography is incredibly important.
Huge. I agree. The typography thing is one of those things. There's no excuse at this point to not, know it like the back of your hand and always get better. I mean, there's so many good typography workshops and things that you could do to kind of do that. I just love creating even Pinterest things of collections of some great typography, analyze it, dissect it, see what makes it so successful, and do the same thing. Font selection is a huge one as well. Adobe Fonts has made it impossible to make a mistake, right? You got no more excuses of like, I can't afford fonts,
Exactly.
They're all there. And it's so great to have that resource as well.
Such a great library too. So
Oh gosh. And it's growing every day. There's always some new stuff in there. And then plus as well, there's so many other great, if you're working with clients or working for a company, obviously you have much more of a freedom to be purchasing and getting some that are really, really unique and cool to your project that you're working on. I love that idea.
yeah.
Also, another question. I was curious if you had any advice for reaching out and talking to someone for an informational interview. That's the easiest question in the world. Reach out.
Reach out.
Just write it.
Exactly. I feel like as students, especially, most times people just seem to self-reject and close the door on themselves before it even opens.
Yeah.
So just do it. Like you'll only be unhappy if you didn't try. And just having that sort of confidence in yourself is incredibly important, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one is necessarily going to do that at the end of the day. So you have to be your biggest advocate, and that's something I've really stood by and have been trying to really do. So just focus on doing, honestly, just focus on what it is you want to do and then go out and do it. Because if you self-reject and stop yourself from doing it in the first place, that's just a mistake, in my opinion. So
yeah, exactly.
It's very easy to send an email. It's very easy to read an email. Some people might not respond, but that's just sort of the sensibility and the thick skin you grow along the ways that you'll get more yeses than nos. You'll get more nos than yeses.
Yeah. I always say, look to where that person is most active. If they are on LinkedIn all the time, Twitter all the time, Instagram all the time, whatever, I find that's a great spot. Catch them where they are usually on most of the time, where a quick message can be replied to quickly. I love that. My buddy Josh Ariza has a great thing. He always says, if you're reaching out to someone, make it one sentence and one sentence only. Don't throw them 18 paragraphs. Works every time.
It's the same thing, right? Like when you're presenting your projects, you want people to get the idea super quickly and just on the whim within a paragraph or just a couple sentences. So it's the same thing when introducing yourself. You're your own project that you're introducing to other people.
Yeah.
Just think of it from that perspective too, and how you're presenting yourself, because you're in charge of your own narrative. You're in charge of what people can think of you, and what people would like to see or get out of you in the first place. So
That's huge.
think of it from that perspective too. What do you have to offer? What is unique about yourself, and how can you use that as leverage to get as far as you possibly can to achieving your goals?
That's wonderfully said. I totally agree. This is a perfect time to reach out to those people too, because with most people still kind of working from home or a little bit more, it might be a little more convenient for that person to reach out and give you a quick informational interview. It could be just a question.
Mm-hmm.
People are so, Zoom has become this whole new thing, right? Like it's not even a phone call anymore. It's like, let's get on a Zoom. It's so take advantage that the world has changed in that way. Use that to your benefit.
Exactly.
I think that's totally the best way to go.
You can be anywhere in the world. You can be in any time zone, but there's obviously ways to make it work right now.
Exactly.
Technology and everything. So
exactly.
Yeah,
Well, this looks amazing. We're getting a really nice recap of everything we've seen here. Go ahead and tell exactly what you're thinking, guys. Give Shantanu some shout outs here. This is amazing work to do in just 2 days. I love the vibe. I love everything here. It really, how do you feel about it? You feeling good?
Yeah, feeling good. I feel like we set out to do what we wanted. We achieved what we set out to do with everyone's recommendations. It was super exciting. Just talking to everyone on the side, like working on the spot and keeping me on my 2 feet, and just making sure I worked as quickly as possible. I loved everyone's suggestions, and I hope I did a good job in terms of incorporating everyone's suggestions, and everyone's happy with the outcome, because ultimately it's a collaborative process with everyone watching the last 2 days. So again, if everyone else watching is happy, I'm happy, because ultimately it's a project made by us.
There you go, man. The whole team did it. You've been an absolute pleasure, bro. I love everything about what you are showing at the year you're in and with the experience you have and just coming out of school. I'm fairly sure you've inspired a few people here to kind of really up their game. And I love that you're showing these things so early in your career and having a blast with it as well. It's really wonderful to see.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if you're having fun doing it, that's the main goal at the end of the day, right? Like
exactly, man.
We're in such a privileged position to be working in the field that we're working in, and be waking up every morning to do and work on something that we're incredibly passionate about. And that's rare, and most people just don't have that sort of luxury. So being able to do that is incredible, and it's important to remind ourselves of that every day.
Good for you, man. Well, hopefully you gained a few new followers. Say hi to Shantanu on Behance. Feel free to reach out to either one of us. Tomorrow, Adobe Live will be back with all the evangelists doing a full day of masterclass. And that will be followed by a whole new episode with me and my buddy Andrew Rahakrattle. We are doing office hours tomorrow. It is a really good one. It's all about the new 3D stuff that you can see in Illustrator. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Shantanu, it's been great. I'm sure we'll be in touch as well.
Yes.
Good to meet you. And thanks so much for everything, brother.
Likewise, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Bye.